Welcome to the We Can Do It Women movement, where women 60 and wiser step into the spotlight and make the rest of their lives the best of their lives. I'm your host, Debra Morrison, a 47-year wealth building expert and champion for extraordinary women just like you. I've helped women secure their financial futures, and now I'm on a mission to ignite a revolution. Yep, a revolution showing the world that at 60, 70, and beyond, some of us might be a nickel slower, yet we're all just getting started. And today's most esteemed We Can Do It Women expert interview features Wendy Leggett, who is, well, let's just welcome you to the show, Wendy. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Fantastic to be here. Thank you, Deborah. Love the energy, and I'm excited for a fun conversation.
It's going to be a great one. Oh my gosh, you guys just wait. So, Wendy is a retirement coach. She is so many things. I'm just going to spurt out a few details and we're going to dig deeper into it because this is so rich. She helps individuals design fulfilling and meaningful life after career, right? Strengthening identity, purpose, connection, and mindset. She's a professional certified coach. She has these certifications that just would clog your, spell check. I mean, it's just nuts how professional and certified she is. She's the founder of Conflux Retirement Coaching. Hope I'm not mispronouncing that. She brings 25 years in corporate leadership, along with advanced training in positive intelligence, transitions, and modern retirement. She's also a co-author of the book, The Retirement Collective, which I have right here on my cell phone. And I have read her collaborative chapter, which is completely rad.
Oh,
So I invite everybody. I don't know if that's right. I'm not on my regular computer. So, oh,
there
now I'm
you go.
seeing it a little
Yeah,
bit. Okay. I just had to prove that I got it and
I
that I have
appreciate that. That's fantastic.
So, Wendy, talk to us about this, however early you want to start. But I'm so impressed with your being involved with corporate leadership for 25 years. Talk to us about a few of the companies that you had worked with in terms of you were working with positive intelligence, presumably with the companies. And then, of course, you've branched out and now you're doing coaching, one-on-one and group coaching. But talk to us about that corporate start because we're always interested in where people have come from.
Oh, yeah. No, I thank you so much. I'll try to be brief about it because 25 years, we could talk for a while about it. But in a nutshell, my background is really in sales leadership. So I worked for a variety of companies from Fortune 50, like AT&T, to franchises, to retail. I worked at Nordstrom for quite a few years in the buying offices. So I have that background and a love of the sales process. Especially around connecting with the client, connecting with my team members, really looking at how I could elevate the experience for everyone and meet and exceed numbers because of that. That was an exciting part for me as well. And so I took all of that and then went out on my own about 6 years ago and took that coaching background that I had and all the things that I told you that really light me up and went back to school and got my certification, as you shared, under an International Coaching Federation certified um, organization, and then added positive intelligence, transition, navigating transition certification, and a focus on retirement life planning from the non-financial standpoint. So you're kind of looking. So what did I say that didn't kind of connect, or what questions does that bring up?
No, I loved what you said. I'm just going to ask you to speak up a little bit. It might be the fact that I had to regroup and I'm on my laptop, but I don't want anyone to miss anything. So if you can go closer to your mic or turn up your microphone, I just want to make sure that everybody can hear. So yes, this is very rich. So you were Nordstrom's and however many companies other than that?
I was at AT&T, Pacific Bell under the AT&T umbrella for the majority, and then also franchises as well. So that and some technology firms, so a variety. And I think that that really gave me such a different perspective from lots of different angles on not just the marketplace, but the people that inhabit it. So.
Well, isn't that the truth? And this whole idea of purpose-driven retirements, I suspect that you were interfacing with a number of, soon to be retired people in these management positions, obviously in these companies. And so, were you in a capacity then, Wendy, to kind of just give them the what for on, hey, plan for this?
No, actually, it really came about when I made the change from being in that sales leadership role into coaching. And I started out as a business coach because they always say, do what you know. And so I started coaching with that bent, but found for me that it was a little more transactional than transformational. And
Oh,
also found that so many of the clients I was working with were starting to think about retirement, and a lot of issues kind of bubbled up. And also in my demographic, because a number of my associates and colleagues and friends were also thinking about retirement, it really shocked me to see, wow, there's some people that are kind of not looking forward to it, or there are questions, or people who have retired, it isn't all rose-colored glasses. And so for those clients that I was working with, I started digging a bit deeper because I wanted to better serve them. And I found out, wow, there's this whole industry around the non-financial retirement planning. So I then, as you shared, added to my alphabet of credentials and got several certifications in retirement life planning, the non-financial piece of it, which maybe the work that you were doing, Deborah, I'm going to think that you touched upon that quite a bit with your clients as a financial advisor and a wealth manager. And at the same time, a lot of times the conversation is around what do you want to do in retirement? And let's make sure that your financial house is in order to do that. And maybe, there's a little smattering of concerns, but I think there isn't this recognition that there can be a real struggle when we retire. There can either be that we go in with this vantage point of it being, endless weekends and leisure and travel, or on the other end of the spectrum, that it's kind of like loss and aging and one foot in the grave. And so that became very paramount for me, is really being able to bring it to the middle. And instead of this idealistic view or pessimistic view, let's have realistic optimism. And so that's really the focus for me, because 1 in 3 struggle in retirement.
oh,
50% of pre-retirees aren't mentally or emotionally prepared, socially prepared for retirement. So there are all these intrinsic issues that need addressing, as well as the extrinsic, as well as the financial piece, which is vitally important. But if we don't step into our whole selves and looking at what's needed in that more macro view, then we're really leaving a lot of our piece parts of ourselves behind.
I could not agree more. And this aspect of people not really understanding, even pre-retirement, when I was managing money for people, although my master's is in retirement planning, so I always attracted an older clientele. And yet, I would sometimes ask people, what's your why for this money that we're investing? What what are we doing? What's the target? So that we know when we get there. We know when we're close. We know when we veered off course. And they would sometimes look at me like a deer in the headlights. And so this was a passion of mine to make meaning of something other than what's my number, right? Because what's my number? I
Yes.
mean, I've got a whole bookshelf, probably, I don't know, probably 150 books on, around what's my number, right? In terms of what is it that I need to have financially. And yet we myopically focus on that, Wendy, to the exclusion of the much more important thing, which is, hey, what are we going to do? Because like once the man typically, and his, although women golf too, I golf a little bit, golfs 4 days a week, it's just like, okay, great, and then there's no applause when they enter the room. I mean, these are very, very real concerns.
Yes.
I'll
Yeah.
just share with you and then I'll shut up and let you opine. I had a little group in my boardroom when I was practicing, and I intentionally invited 6 lawyer couples. Both spouses were lawyers. So high intelligent people around the table. Well, some people might question that, but anyway, they were. And around the table, and I had this little like the newlywed game, little pieces of paper. And I said, okay, you write everybody, all the men over here, and they were all heterosexual, all right, fine. All the women, you write down the age you're going to retire. Now, all of these were over 50 people. They were not like 20-year-olds. Asked them to write down when they were going to retire, the year. There wasn't one couple that knew their partner's answer within, Wendy, 3 years.
Yeah.
So talk
Yeah,
to
no,
me
that
about
doesn't.
people that you have dealt with that are that clueless.
Ye- Well, I think it's a matter of assumptions and unspoken expectations and a lack of communication. So I think that people think that they have a clue. I think that what bubbled up and what you found, and it tracks with everything that I experience in the research that I've done, is that couples do come into retirement oftentimes with very different mindsets. The studies show that men tend to look at it as a time of relaxation and kind of rest, and women look at it as a time of rejuvenation and reimagining. And it, of course, that's doesn't fit everybody. Those are generalities. But what it bubbles up for us is if we come in with a very different outlook on it, then it's no wonder that we might continue to walk down a separate path instead of coming together. So I've got some really great tools that I use with couples that do allow for this conversation and do allow for, gosh, I was thinking this, but you were thinking that, and how together in the areas that we need to, how can we collaborate on this or come together on it? I do want to circle back to your mentioning about the why, because I think that that's so pivotal and at the core of this. You know, we talk about finding purpose, and people think, oh, I have to find purpose. And yet that looms so large. It can be so overwhelming. Like, how do you find purpose? Did it get lost? Is it hiding? You know? And so that just can be a showstopper right there. And so instead, if we think about it as purposeful, and that how do we feel purposeful, and how are we finding meaning in the everyday? And so it
That's
can
it.
be, as Richard Leider says, purpose with a capital P, and it can be purpose with a lowercase p. And so we can find feelings of purpose in helping a neighbor, in reading a great book that expands our thinking, in starting a nonprofit, having a part-time job, any number of things. But we don't have to be thinking, oh, I've got to scale that mountain in order to feel like I've shown purpose. So let's make it a verb. Let's make it something action oriented and feeling purposeful rather than finding the one and done purpose, which is in our lives will continue to evolve, we hope, because we have this incredible opportunity to grow and learn and expand and experiment and things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I read an interesting thing just in the last couple of days. When heterosexuals marry, the woman hopes that the man hopes she'll change the man. And the
Mm.
man hopes that the woman will stay the same, and both of
Oh,
them will be disappointed. So let's talk about, you have some little touch points here, 5 of them. Bring your whole self. You've talked a little bit about that. If you want to add any more, go for it. Purpose and meaning. Yeah. Intentional design. Let's dig into that 1 second.
well, I think so often when we think about different, and I shouting because I feel like I'm shouting. Is
No,
that
you're not. No, it's
okay?
coming
You
through.
can hear me. Okay. All right. When we think about planning for retirement, and again, we oftentimes think about the financial piece. I want to take us back to other milestones in life. So let's think about when we went, let's say, from high school to college, or we went from being a renter to a homeowner. Yes, the financial piece was vitally important. You couldn't buy a house without having the money for it. You couldn't go to a certain college if you didn't have the money for it. But I'd also challenge us to really think back and say, yeah, but there was so much more to it than that. When we were looking at that home, how did that community feel to us? Did it feel like a house or did it feel like a home, et cetera, et cetera? So you get the gist. And yet, so often with this milestone, because we just have that societal view that it's going to be this fantastic time or this horrible time, one or the other, that we don't look at what else is needed to prepare so that we can take the advantage of it. And the intentionality is really starting with that mindset, that perspective that yes, I'm aging, I'm getting older, but I can still grow. I can still learn. I can still contribute. And so when people kind of put parameters around it and say, oh, I'm too old to do that, or
Oh
I
yeah.
should have done that when, or now it's too late, where does that come from? And how can we reframe it to say, I haven't tried that before, and now I'm going to give it a try. And instead of being all in with both feet, experimenting and putting a toe in first. Because so often when people do retire, they go from that full on career to then full on volunteering or full on taking care of grandkids or full on starting a business. And oftentimes they can feel then just as hamstrung or tied into things and have resignation or have resentment
That's
that
it.
maybe they didn't expect and that we wouldn't want them to have. So intentionality, that's kind of part of that umbrella. What does that bring up for you, Deborah?
Well, I completely resonate. And I think that the flexibility and us being nimble with our plans is so critical. And I also want to implore us to imagine that we won't be needing to do everything with our partner. And there often one of us has, gone to a different location to work and or two locations to work. And so this idea that, oh, well, she doesn't like to golf or he doesn't like to golf or she doesn't like to play cards. And, this is, I mean, have a girls' retreat, and have a guys, whatever that appeals to each of the partners. Now, I'm not, limiting it to heterosexual, but the fact is, this aspect of intentionality towards having some type of a plan, a skeletal plan. So it's not like, oh, what day is it? I don't even know what day it is. And
Yeah.
to not be judgmental, Wendy. I think that's the thing is to shed the judgment, shed any shame, like, oh, I thought I was going to do that, but clearly I'm hating that, or I made an agreement to babysit the kids 3 days a week, and now I'm just plumb tired and bored. I don't want to do that 3 days a week. So I think
Yes.
that this fluidity is so vital.
I agree. And the word that comes to mind and what I talk about is being the CEO of you, is really taking that agency and being at choice and then being accountable for the decisions. Because if we don't make those decisions, life invariably will make them for us.
Right.
And yet we have this opportunity that maybe we haven't had, at least to this extent in our lives.
Mhm.
We have that opportunity to exercise that. But in order to do that, it really is this mindset of spaciousness, of giving things a try, that giving ourselves space and grace before we set a pace. And so that just that concept of really taking it one step at a time. And so when I speak about a plan, it's having some kind of framework because as humans, we tend to operate well when we have some kind of guardrails,
Yeah.
and each of us is different what that looks like. But if we don't have some kind of destination in mind, not that we're attached to it tightly, but if we don't have a destination, it's kind of like getting in your car and not plugging in an address. You're going to just be driving around, and that's going to waste time and energy and money, et cetera, et cetera. So all that to be said, that's why I think the work that I do makes such a huge difference because it allows people at the offset to start to envision what life post-career can look like and what elements, what roadmap would be helpful because so many of these milestones, we have a roadmap. We know that when we go to college, we'll be spending 4 years or so and we'll be studying and we'll be doing this and such. If all we know when we're going into retirement is that we are going to golf or we're going to travel, that may work out great for a time and it may work out great forever. But for the majority of people, that honeymoon phase lasts about 6 months to two
That's right.
years. And then it starts to feel like same old. And it starts to feel like, wow, is this all there is for me? And people start to feel like, wow, retirement isn't cracked up what it was supposed to be. And that's where we saw, in some cases, people going back to work, or we saw people who then really become very diminished. And neither of those things is necessary if we're planful, if we're intentional, and if we get into action with small steps that move us in a direction that aligns with things that feel meaningful for us.
Love that. Love that. Have you a set of exercises, or how do you deal with? I'll talk about couples for a moment, but individuals can do it by themselves, and I'm an individual, and I do it most of life by myself. So how do you have people help themselves tease out things that might have been tamped down for a little while to get to what could be possibilities for them to explore?
Yes, well, it is a process, but some of the exercises, as you asked, are like around values. And
There you go.
so often, again, that term just seems a little bit vague or nebulous. But if we really key in on some of those North Stars for ourselves, then when these opportunities come up, we can kind of balance it with our values and see, are we in alignment there? So that's one area. We do explore what could feel purposeful to us. So there's exercises around if nobody was watching, or if it didn't really matter what the outcome was, or when you were younger, what really lit you up. So
Oh,
that's another
yeah.
one that we look at. We look at also connection, and we haven't even spoken about that. But you're talking about connecting as a couple, and we can talk about connecting to ourselves, connecting to our significant other, connecting to our community, connecting to the world. And so, how are we open to that? Are we watching? Are we present? Are we soaking in everything that's happening? So, we work through that. And then the connection socially, we look at who's in your friend group and are they gains or are they drains? Are they
Oh, I
energizing
love that. You
and
guys,
on your
she
camp?
just she just dropped a nugget here. Are they gains or are they drains?
Yeah.
Hello.
What about that kind of connected for you?
Oh, well, first of all, we all know, the people you spend the 5 people you spend the most time with, you're going to emulate them. And there's a sense by which, our environment can hold us back or it can enliven us. And it's so important for us to recognize that. So we'll be,
Yeah.
you know, maybe experimenting with new groups. Maybe we'll look up meetups and maybe we'll talk to, people in the community and we'll join groups that we never joined before. Or maybe we're going to move to a different location and we want to go to that location first and rent for 6 months, figure it out. So
Yeah.
these kinds of things, and it kind of ties in a couple of your pivotal points here: growth mindset and emotional and social well-being. So it
Yeah.
is that
They're all
integrating,
interconnected. Yes. Yeah.
integrating.
And it's that whole self. And you bring up such an important point because so many of the clients that I work with start off by saying, I've lost contact with these friends and it's too late. And I really challenge them to say, well, if you got a call from someone that you hadn't spoken with in a while, would you say, you're too late? No, you would welcome that call. And we can do it again without attachment to where it's going to go. If we haven't yet retired, we can be really being mindful about reaching out to people. And it doesn't mean that you have to have an hour in your day. You could call and say, hey, I was thinking about you. I just have 10 minutes, but I really wanted you to know that I was thinking about you and how are you? And keep it to that. But oftentimes it is this black or white proposition that we're all in with all our friends or we're all out. And research says to us that we're going to continue to lose those connections, right?
Yes.
Over
Yes.
time, of course. And if we can be intentional instead of and active in growing our network and growing that community, wow, what a huge difference it makes. So a community like you've developed here, what a difference. And so I'm going to think I'm preaching to the choir for everyone listening. And I would also invite us all to think of, okay, what's one more thing that I could do? Because
Right.
people so often hold back, and it's just a muscle that maybe we haven't used for a while, or that at work it became so easy because everybody's there. And now
Yeah.
that we're away from work, everybody's not there. So
Not
now,
there.
how do we find our tribe and how do we make those connections?
Yeah.
But if we can look at it as an experiment and look at it that, hey, I'm just going to put a toe into this meetup as you shared, or reach out to this person and see where it goes and find it fascinating no matter where it leads us. That alone can just be very energizing. It's an exploration. So,
I agree. And I've sometimes invited couples that feel a little like thrown asunder, like now they have no schedule and so forth and so on. And I invite them, if they still have them, and most of them do, excuse me, take out their wedding album
mm,
and have a whole weekend and just be in an idyllic spot, maybe in your home, maybe travel to someplace that's lovely, and take your wedding album and just go through it. And you're going to reintroduce yourselves to each other.
mm,
And you're going to kindle that love in a way that is different. And yet you're hearkening back to, years of yore, right? And so this aspect, along with, I think, writing our bucket list, and I like to do things separately. Like I had the women write their bucket list, and I had the guys write their bucket list, and then they shared them with each other. And I've just looked at the dialogue. I didn't care about them. I wasn't judging anybody. As a matter of fact, I don't even think we made them public. I just had them pair up and then just sit across from each other and share it. And the look in their eyes, like, and then sometimes it's like, oh, me too. And then I'm thinking, oh my God, they're uncovering their future here in my boardroom. Better here than never.
Yes, yeah, no. So I love the different things that you stepped your clients through. And I think that idea of communicating again what's on the bucket list, and also for an individual as well as potentially a couple, but I do offer this up to my clients, is a curiosity list, because bucket lists oftentimes we feel really attached to that. I have to do that. And
Okay.
it can kind of take away sometimes the joy or the freedom. And so a curiosity list along with it can really allow us to just see, again, what do I want to just put a toe into? What do I want to just test out? And it doesn't, I can just research a little and then say, no, it's off the list, or yeah, now it's on the bucket list, or no, I need to know more, or I'll put a toe in. So all of these things, I think what we're talking about is just being open, having that growth mindset, not feeling as though I'm one and done, I'm fixed, I'm static, I can't change, I can't shift, I can't pivot. But instead, yes, I'm a growing, living, learning individual that can continue to explore and expand. And so testing that out in all kinds of different ways. But that's the spice of life. That's really allowing us to really thrive and explore areas that maybe we wouldn't have before because we didn't have the time or we didn't have the confidence or the commitment to ourselves that we were going to step in. You've brought up couples, and so I just want to share that I think that really sitting down and talking about what each person wants, and then looking at where is the intersection and where are the separate paths. That doesn't mean that you're then again going to be walking down it alone forever. You're going to have those experiences on your own and then bring it back to the relationship. And how enriching is that? When we
Very.
can bring our experiences in a different perspective back to our significant other and share that and learn from each other, as opposed to walking down the path together on everything, which can maybe lose some of its richness. I'm not saying it does or it doesn't.
Oh,
I just want to offer up that idea. And I think too, you brought up opening the wedding album. Well, I'm going to guess that even back at those times, we weren't spending 24/7 together.
no,
This is a
no.
very unique situation. And so it's okay if we're not doing everything together. And so in that time that we're reflecting, what a beautiful springboard then into that kind of conversation. And lastly, I want to say too, because when I recently looked at my wedding album, I thought, how cool is that all of my bridesmaids are still my best friends. And
Interesting.
so how wonderful to have that in my life. And so that's talking about connection as well, and what it takes to continue to foster those relationships where we can. And then if that's not possible, then how can we expand it? And what was it about those friendships that was so dear to us or meaningful? And how can we seek that out or provide that to others so that we expand our circle?
Right,
Yeah.
right. I'm completely in agreement. The curiosity, I love that. I'm insatiably curious, and I kind of project that that everybody's that curious, and probably they're not. But I think this kind of license, as you're saying, to take agency and to spark our curiosity genes, right? And to invite our partner, if we're partnered, to do the same. You have a three-part framework, Wendy, for a no regrets retirement: awareness, intuition, and movement. Talk to us about how you came to those three action words.
Yeah, well, I really wanted to kind of synthesize this idea of um, having a plan and moving into action. And I thought, well, in order to do that, first we need to be aware that there is this dark side to retirement, that there are struggles. I've had clients come to me just so shocked that they were really having difficulties, and I normalize it to say, you're not alone. And
Good.
that in and of itself lifts such a weight. When we
Yes.
feel like we're not the only one, and then we feel a sense of community and we feel like, okay, I'm not the outlier here.
Yeah.
So that awareness that there are these difficulties around retirement potentially. The average retiree watches anywhere from 32 to 47 hours of TV a week. I mean, we need to know that that's potentially the reality. So that awareness is critically important, knowing the downside. And then the intentionality, okay, that's maybe the reality, but how am I going to move it in a direction that serves me? So am I watching TV a little too much? Well, what hole is that filling maybe for me? Is it because I need a break? Okay, then what's causing that? Or is it because I'm getting enamored with somebody else's life instead of my own? Maybe that's worth exploring. So that's where we start to become a little more intentional, not just about TV, but about, hey, this is my life. I have hopefully 20, 30 or more years if we retire at that typical age. And so that's a third of our life still. So what
Right.
is it that we want in our life? You know, who are the people? What are the things? What are the feelings that we want to have? That's that intentionality. And then getting moving is really that taking one step, not jumping
Thank
in with
you.
both feet, but taking that one step and moving forward and just in every day kind of thinking, okay, what's one little thing, you know, and hopefully it's more than one thing, but at least one thing so that we're not on that hamster wheel and feeling like same old, same old. So that's
Mhm.
why I kind of like to kind of incorporate it in this acronym of AIM, awareness,
Yeah.
intention, movement.
I love that. I love it. And I speak of wealth always in five as comprised of five components: physical, mental, relational, spiritual, and financial. And I always say financial last because when you say wealth, you think greenbacks. But all the greenbacks in the world without your health, if your mental acuity is slipping, if your relationships aren't quite there, and there's nothing bigger than you in which you believe, no spirituality, no grounding, I
Yeah.
think we're at a deficit. And so I want us to be attentive to these five components in a way that does not depend upon how much money we have. Because I
Yes.
manage money for one client had over $25 million with me, and then another client had 400,000. And both of them lived successful retirements.
And that really comes from perspective, doesn't it? That really
It's
comes from that looking at what's possible and from that abundance rather than lack. I had one client who his financial advisor recommended, I work with a lot of financial advisors, recommended him to me. He was very angry, really, and frustrated that he couldn't afford to retire. And so I really spoke with him through the course of and I'll encapsulate it, but through the course of our work together to bring him to a place of recognizing that he was at choice. He owned a beautiful home that he could sell. He was involved in a lot of very expensive hobbies that he could step away from so that he really could retire. If he put all of those things into play, but he said, no, I love my home. No, I love my hobbies. And it was like, wow, okay, then really you're at choice here. And that gratitude that he started to build around that and the recognition that he was choosing to not retire. He could retire, I think oftentimes does hold us back. And so for that, those clients of yours, regardless of where they were financially, having that perspective that there is opportunity, that there is abundance rather than scarcity or lack. And how can we make the most of what we do have? And so I think that that's a critically important one too, especially when people aren't maybe getting to choose when they retire, if they're displaced and we can feel that we're coming in from a place of lack. And I really understand that and I empathize with it. And I encourage us to look at what is possible. If this is an area that's out of your control, what is in your control? And
That's right.
mindset is most certainly one of those things that is.
Uh, Control what we can control. Like, I don't know how many planes I was on, and then my seatmate would say, "Hey, what are you doing? I'm a financial planner." Well, where are interest rates going? How about you control your budget? You control your investments. You control I like to use the bucket list. How about you do that? But see that involves us taking responsibility, and there's such an allergy in some cases, and perhaps just an abject fear of the unknown that
Yeah.
causes us to not really step into the same responsibility that we might if we're in a corporate position. Our boss came in our office and said, "Hey, here's the assignment, Wendy, handle it," and bam, you'd have it done by noon, right?
Yes, yeah, it's an interesting one, and now we're that boss. We're the boss of ourselves, and so we need to be listening to ourselves. But what voices are we hearing? And so are
That's
we
it.
hearing a voice that really spurs us on, and is that gain, or are we, draining ourselves? And that's where the work of the positive intelligence that I got involved in is such a great tool in the work I do, because it is around this idea of us having saboteurs that really can hijack our happiness. So that avoider saboteur that keeps us from putting that toe in, or that pleaser saboteur that says yes, 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 and we're saying no to ourselves, or that saboteur that feels like, oh, poor me. And so it's that victim saboteur. And we all have them. And so catching them in the act and saying, no, you're not supporting me. You're not serving me. You don't belong in my life. And being able to shift our mindset. And of course, there's a bigger process around it, but it is that concept. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted you to delve into that because it was a term I hadn't, I mean, I kind of put it together, but I didn't have experience with that. Do you want to say any more about that? Because that's, that's a valuable,
Yeah,
that's a,
it's kind of life changing for a lot of my clients.
I
I
think it's
do offer it
transformational, isn't it?
along with the work that I do. A gentleman, Shirzad Shamin, uh, a big researcher, author, leader, developed this program, Positive Intelligence, and he has a book called Positive Intelligence, and it's an entire series where we learn about the three core factors, the root causes of dissatisfaction and unhappiness, and that's these saboteurs that try to hijack our happiness and talk in our ear. And there's the judge. He's the biggest saboteur, that we judge ourselves, we judge others, we judge circumstances. And then there are accomplice saboteurs, like I mentioned, the pleaser, the avoider, and there are 10 of them. And so we learn about them and we start to see, oh, okay, that's coming from that saboteur voice. And then we take a breath, we stop, and we just calm our nervous system. It's kind of like a mini brain breather. And then we're able to we start to learn how to shift into what's called sage. And we become more empathetic with ourselves or others, or we start to explore the possibilities, or we get innovative. We think about how, looking back, I would want to have gone about this in my life. So there are the five sage responses as well. So over the course of that work, we start to develop this mental fitness. You and I spoke very, very briefly about physical fitness and being, well, there's mental fitness too. And how do we build those muscles?
Right.
Because mindset matters. So that's what positive intelligence is about. Did that kind of make a
It
little
does. Yeah,
sense?
it's a
Yeah.
great expose on it. Thank you. And I'm reading from Wendy's chapter here. Uh, a great place to start is with space and grace. See, I love
Mm,
these little turns of phrase that you put out, and I think that they're amazing. Congratulations. It's
thank
vital to
you.
give ourselves time to explore the feelings that are coming up and be patient with ourselves as we navigate what might feel like uncomfortable or unknown territory. I shared a story about my client who felt retirement equated to loss. Once she identified and could express those painful feelings, she could look closer to determine where they came from and if they fit and were valid for her. She soon discovered that her feelings of loss came from fear of the unknown, and once acknowledged, she could begin to envision what life could be like for her post-career. Boy, fear, 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 and
Yeah.
maybe a different cloak, but fear at the end of it, at the nexus of it.
Yeah.
And how do you help people actually bust through that fear? Aside from let's take some action, but talk to me.
Yeah, well, it really can't start with action right away, right? Because it
Right, right, right.
has to be acknowledging, like with that client, acknowledging the fear, and that, yes, it makes sense. This is your history, this is your experience, this is your perspective. Where where is that coming from? How is that serving you? What place in your life does that have? And what else is possible? And if you were to be able to move past the fear, what could that open up for you? So it's that exploration and that excavation. We're not, as a coach, I'm not a therapist, so it's not a matter of digging deep into the past. We touch upon the past to then be able to move forward. So we don't get into areas that are so deep in our past. But at the same time, we need to give a nod to whatever our experiences have been so that we can then see, okay, again, how does this serve us? What place does it have and what could be different if I could shift? And what does it take then to be able to shift? So we start with that really acknowledgement and recognition of what someone is working, dealing with, or what's coming up for them. Like you said, the fear maybe. And then once we're able to kind of dissipate that fear, then we're able to be at that place of strength and that place of looking at possibilities. If we overlook it, then it is, as I said in the book, something that in our demographic, those in the retirement age, we weren't raised with positive psychology. So if you had a difficult emotion, in the main, you would either push it down or push it aside because no pain, no gain, and you just, charge on forward. And that's where positive intelligence, this idea of looking at our emotions, not as good or bad, but as a signal that something needs a little more attention, is just invaluable. And when we give those emotions attention, not that we're going to wallow in them, that we're going to use them as signals and signposts, what else is needed, then we can start to see, okay, now what would be exciting to me? What would be something I'd like to try out? What and then go from that point of strength. So that's the concept behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you speak of you're starting with a judgment-free zone. Yeah. Judgment-free, like back, put that behind us.
Yes, yeah, because so often we do get into that comparison game in retirement. Oh, they're traveling everywhere and I don't have the resources to do it. So my retirement is bad and theirs is good and I'll never be able to. And so that gets into that judgment too, judging of our own situation or other people's. And so it's important to walk our own path and really determine what feels meaningful to us. Who do we feel great being around? What contribution do we want to make to others? This is an opportunity now where we can be a kid in a candy store, don't want to eat so much that we get a tummy ache. So we want to just take one piece at a time, but really test out what tastes the best to us. What works for us. Maybe something worked for someone else, but looking at what works for us. I have an interesting situation. This hasn't happened before where I had a client who I started working with, and it became clear to me very soon into our engagement that she wasn't ready to retire. She was looking to retire because all of her family members had retired early and they were putting so much pressure on her to retire. And so she was abdicating that decision. And so in working together, she was really able to see a retirement by design, not default, and not abdicating it, but instead looking at, okay, did her life have the balance she was looking for? Did she feel as though she was giving the attention to different piece parts that were important? And she felt that way. And she was engaged in her work. She felt gratified in her work. The financial piece of it was important to her as well. So she wasn't ready to retire. And that's what I really want to bring forward is when we think about retirement, really defining what does that mean for you? And if it's just age related, that's kind of a set point. We're buying into a number that may not fit for us. So instead, let's really take that ownership and say what works for me. And then if we decide that we're going to retire, then let's have a runway to retirement. Instead of one day you're in, the next day you're out, let's be planful, think about it ahead so that we can start to build some of these great habits along the way. So we can start to build our external social network, or we can start to go to the gym a little bit more, or we can start to put a toe in to see, oh, would this be of interest to me, or is this hobby something I'd like to foster? If we've already retired, it's not never, ever, ever too late. But then we can continue to foster some of the things that I've shared today.
That's so rich, Wendy. I love that runway to retirement. I want us to be cautious about comparing our retirements to that of our parents, because
Mm,
there's a whole different dynamic with our retirements. I mean, our parents died with the watch, the gold watch, the $2,000 a month in their mailbox, and it was in their mailbox in the day. And they, hooked a five-wheel up and they traveled around the United States and they lived fat and happy. Well, most of us like left our parents' house in our teens or early 20s. And that doesn't happen so much now. And when our parents, had their house by themselves, they really had their own grocery bill. And when sometimes we're parenting, sometimes we're still paying grocery bills for other people, like our kids. And so there are pressures like that, as well as costs are going up, and yet the marketing kinds of pressures that we're subjected to, like you could just take your phone and boom, buy 73 things that'll be in a locker near you in a minute. Our parents weren't subjected to that. And
Right.
so this whole idea of us saying, well, mom and dad did this, wonder why we can't. I want to disabuse us of feeling guilty about and coming up short, feeling coming up short that not having the same kind of freedom and, guaranteed pension that our parents had.
Yes, and some of that, most of that part is out of our control. There just aren't that many companies that any longer offer that kind of
Yep.
financial security that our parents had. And also, how we're looking at our life ahead and what we want. Our demographic wants more.
Yes.
We want more. We don't want to just, not that traveling is wrong because it's wonderful, but we want more balance maybe, or we want a fuller experience, or we recognize now that if we aren't active, that our health is going to make a big impact. And so we may be seeing that in our parents, is that by not making those investments in that full circle, as you shared, around emotional, mental, social, spiritual, and physical health, which is foundational in my book too, then
Yes.
we're maybe not going to be having the 20 or 30 years ahead of us be as rich and possibility free, possibility full as they could be. So I think that that comparison, as you shared, it's sort of like, why do we think about retirement in those terms, but we don't think about other factors that with in regards to our parents. And so it's important that we not beat ourselves up about certain things, and that we're able to let go of others. So let's let go of everyone else's retirement experience. We can certainly use it as a little barometer, give us a little information, but it doesn't mean that we have to buy into that package. We create our own. And I think that's really important. And I think too, I'm a retirement life coach, but I always say that I don't advocate to retire, but I do advocate that if you're going to retire, then don't abdicate the opportunities there. Retire well, design it instead of having a retirement by default. So, whatever age you determine that to be, then I do recommend that you take aim, that you are aware of what is it that you want this next wonderful chapter to look like, what is needed, intentionality, what's needed to put it into place, and what can you do now, a small step to get moving. So I think that that's a big takeaway that I would want to really express to everyone.
And I think you put it beautifully. And the contributors that you're crediting in your chapter, Brene Brown, Carol Dweck, I love her work, Brene Brown, and a couple other men. And it's impressive, the interweaving of their disciplines, like, fall down 6, get up 7, right? Brene Brown, big on that, right? Clearly. The aspect, Wendy, of us becoming and shoring our physical movement and our physicality up
Yeah,
before it gets a little bit too late. And so to make some deposits into that bank, right? Start to walk, start to do something. Like I would ask people that I've interviewed on this show, that are fitness people, and I say, give us a couple little exercises so that, people that haven't been doing anything can start. And this woman leans forward, she has a PhD, and she goes, move. And I was like, right, move. So how do you talk about staying physically fit? Because who wants to be subjected? I mean, believe me, I had parents and they were in wheelchairs, but who would choose to be in
yeah.
a wheelchair and you have to depend on someone else to push you if you could delay or defer or eliminate that possibility. And yet I want us to be mindful of that before, we're 85. I mean, let's start to put deposits into that bank. What do you suggest for
Yeah.
people to get started in that or pay attention to that?
Yeah, I mean, you're bringing up something pivotal that in all aspects, the emotional, the mental, the social, the spiritual, the physical, that we're making those deposits, and they don't have to be huge. Just like with financial planning, it just starts with that dollar, and so it starts with that movement, as you shared. And James Clear around habit building talks about this idea that okay, if you're struggling to get on the treadmill or struggling to get out for that walk, the first step is just putting your shoes on.
That's right.
That's all you have to do. Just put your shoes on. And the majority of times, when somebody is mindful enough to put their shoes on, they'll go ahead and take a step or two. And maybe it'll be for 5 minutes. And then the next time put those shoes on, maybe it'll be for 6. We start somewhere. But I think oftentimes we think, oh, I've retired, I'm supposed to do a triathlon. And so either it's all in or all out. And so instead, let's just take those smaller measures. No, no, we're not going to maybe write about it on Facebook that I took a 5 minute walk, but that's not what this is all about, right? You're investing in yourself. This isn't about anybody else's feedback. And that's why I always kind of hesitate when people say, "Oh, what's the biggest breakthrough that some of your clients have had?" And they think that it'll be about something that's so external, but it's really the internal changes. And when you take that accountability to really take charge of your health and fill in that bank account of all that healthiness, you're going to start feeling better. It's going to permeate in all different aspects of your life. But it is a matter of taking that accountability and taking that control in that first step. I know it sounds so simple, but it really is pivotal. And I think
It is.
oftentimes we let things get in the way because we do think, oh, it's not enough. And so if we're not equipped to have it be enough, then we sometimes don't even step into it. So I really encourage us to all just step into it. And if one day you intended to walk and you didn't, okay, tomorrow's another day. Or is the day over yet? Maybe you can get out there and still walk.
Exactly. Boy, those endorphins that get released when we do any type of movement, especially if we've been in a season of not, uh,
Yes.
it's palpable.
Yeah.
And I invite us to move into that, every pun intended, move into that next chapter of staying mobile.
Yeah.
And to your point, I love that point that, you think, well, I only, went on the tread or the elliptical. I have elliptical downstairs. I went on the elliptical for 4 minutes. And so if it's not noteworthy to put onto Facebook so everybody can be jealous of you that you did this kind of strong arm, whatever, right? Then
Yeah.
we discount it. And I want us to be accountable to ourselves. I want us to do this, love
Mm,
ourselves.
love that.
Love
Yeah.
ourselves enough to take, to your point, agency, take responsibility for what we're thinking and feeling and the directions and the curiosities that we have and communicating them with ourselves, first of all, and then if partnered with our partner or with friends.
Yes, yeah. You know what comes up for me with so many of my clients, we talk about celebrating, and it's such a muscle that's comes so hard for people. But once they really step into it, they can see the difference. And it's catching ourselves doing something right, and it can be very, very small or it can be big, but mostly small. And we overlook it, or like you said, we discount it or we disclaim it, and we just think, oh, it's not enough. But we need to be our own best cheerleader. And that talk, it can be negative self-talk or it can be encouraging, positive, hugging ourselves self-talk. And so celebrating ourselves along the way, catching ourselves throughout the day. Wow, I completed that. I cleaned that closet. I read that book. I helped that neighbor, whatever it is. Really celebrating ourselves for anything big or small. Yeah.
I love that. And I love the aspect of journaling because it gives us a place to go back and say, hey, I wasn't walking, a year ago, but now I am, and to see the progression because sometimes we forget that, we've come a
Yes.
long way, baby. Right.
Yes.
And so I think this
Yes.
whole aspect of being uh, curious and being congratulatory and catching ourselves doing great things, this so dovetails with being grateful, right? Let's be
Yes.
grateful which sends us into an entirely different morning, right? The second we open our eyes and are conscious in the morning, uh, I'm grateful for, and just start, and just keep going. Grateful for, and cursive writing has been shown
Mm,
to when you don't pick up your writing instrument from the pad or surface, it's shown to activate a portion in our brain that really accentuates and accelerates healing, particularly
mm,
also of trauma. So if something has held us back in the past and we wouldn't have even thought about writing, I want us to write. I want us to
yeah.
write. I want us to get it down and catch ourselves, to your point. I love that phraseology, doing something great or a little tiny new thing. So I
Yeah.
want to
Whatever it
celebrate that.
is. Yeah. Because we get to just say it to ourselves. It's not like we have to be, posting it on a board anywhere. So, what comes up for me when you talk about gratitude and we talk about celebration
Yes.
really is this idea of being present, is
Yes.
really just being in that moment because when we're in that moment, we can see what the riches are that are in our lives. And so that gratitude just becomes that much more pronounced for us when we're present. I talk with people about the travel plans that they have and this concept of intentional travel. So often when people have travel plans, then they go, 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 and they have a bucket list and they're clicking everything off, and they're not really present to it. They're
Yes.
not, they don't, haven't set an intention about how do I want to feel on this trip? What do I want to experience? When I get back, what do I want to look back on and think, oh, I enjoyed that so much. That meant so much to me. And that's where then that gratitude can come from, that because we've been present and we're aware and we're living in that moment. I think so often we pull from the past or we jump to the future instead of being in the present. And especially when we're in retirement, what a great muscle to build. Just really, really focusing on when you're in something, be all in. Don't need to be thinking about what's going to be next or, oh, I should have done this.
Take that shitter right out of here. I love that. And as I knew, we are running out of time. So please, Wendy, tell us, our viewing audience, how they can best reach you. We'll put it in the show notes, but you tell us.
Oh, I appreciate that so much. Well, my website is my company name. So Conflux Retirement Coaching, CONFLUX Retirement Coaching. And there's a lot of blog articles that I think your listeners would enjoy. And I offer everyone a complimentary coaching session. And it really is the opportunity to delve into what's most challenging for you or what's an opportunity that you need some support in and stepping into. And so I really welcome that. And you can go on my website and then sign up for that there if you'd like to. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I do have a Facebook account as well, but I'm mostly on LinkedIn. And so welcome you to connect with me, and look forward to conversations with everyone. Thank you.
Well, Wendy, it's been my pleasure for sure, and those of our viewers and listeners. And I thank you for being with us and sharing your wisdom. It has been rich, and we'll have to have you back because we're not done. We're
Oh,
not done.
thank you so much. What a pleasure. Really, really
Yes.
great questions and insights. Thank you too.
So hang with me 1 second, please. So, thank you, listeners and viewers, for joining us on the We Can Do It Women Show. Remember, I see you. I value you. And this is your greatest chapter yet, and it is just beginning. Yes, it is. And so if today's episode sparks something in you, I invite you to just do a little bit of mind work and gut work and heart work and journal about what curiosity you can spark and wave an ember to get into the next stage, to give you more joy in your life. That's really what it's about. And I want us to have a lot of fun and joy in our life rather than being alive and existing. And speaking of being alive, this next week is the deadline. I think it's next Friday for the deposits for our French retreat. So I will welcome any questions. Anybody ping me for more details. We're tweaking the website a little bit with all the rooms in it. It's going to be amazing. You can choose your own room. And it's the Wealth and Wellness Luxury Retreat. Now, this is the same place we went last year. And yet this year, I am going to have everyone leave the French retreat before you get on the plane with 1 to 3 different money-making opportunities on your laptop. You won't have to go home and start it. No, you'll just continue it. And so it's a lifelong skill. I'm volunteering you to train you step by step. This is something you won't want to miss, and it will be a big ROI on your investment. And it's probably tax deductible. Ask your CPA. So I invite you to consider that strongly. Yes, we're going to have an amazing time, October 25th through November 1st. After all, a lot of people in the obituaries didn't plan on being there yesterday. And I don't want us to live unfulfilled lives. So I want us to go for the gusto. And if you're at all intrigued with learning new skills as to how to make money to perhaps buy you more opportunity and more choices, I'm your gal. Did it 42 years, made people tens of millions of dollars. I can do it for you too. So join us and we will have a blast. So in the meantime, pay attention to your money. It will pay you back. Until next time, be well.